Brian, my man, I don't know why we didn't do this sooner. That's on me, but absolutely great to run you down. Great to have a chance to chop it up with you. Thanks for making time. How you doing, man? What's going on?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's a bit of a surreal moment for me as a over 30-year clone to be doing this, but it's awesome.
I'd love to start right there, but I'm not going to. I can't make it about me. Why don't we go to the very beginning? You and I actually share similar roots. We both grew up in the mean streets of the 818, the San Fernando Valley. You in Woodland Hills, me a few streets over in Hidden Hills or Calabasas. How would you describe your childhood in the Valley, and what were you into growing up?
I mean, I loved it there. It was a real great place. Single mom, had a nice house though, and it's a beautiful part of the world, obviously Woodland Hills. A little hot in the summertime, and we only had a swamp cooler, but I've learned to enjoy the heat. But it was great. Growing up, I played baseball. I played baseball from like 5 until I was 18.
Dude, where, what little league did you play in?
I played I forget the name of the league, but it was Shoop Park.
Okay.
You know where Shoop is?
Sure, I do.
Shoop Park, yeah. We played there. Yeah, I said I played for like 13 years. And so that was really great. I did really well in school up until the point where I had to. So I went to Hughes Junior High School. All of my friends went to El Camino, and I had to go to Taft because I was on basically the borderline. Like I said, the borderline like ran through our house, and my mom actually campaigned to get me to go to El Camino, but I had to go to Taft, which was not the best time, but I was getting into music anyway. But I was on the tennis team, which is similar to your story as well.
Bro,
yeah,
incredible. I didn't know that. All right, so what's really interesting about all that is I hear what you're saying. What you're saying is all my friends went to El Camino. I went to Taft. When I grew up, I actually grew up on the west side, and everything was great in my life until we moved to the 818, and they dropped me in at A.E. Wright Middle School, then Calabasas High School, and I wasn't one of the cool kids. I didn't fit in, so I didn't love that whole scene. But the good thing about you going to Taft is I know you must have hit that In-N-Out burger on Winnetka where I got my first job.
Yeah, it's funny when you were talking about that. I was like, I wonder if that's the one on Ventura, because we used to go there all the time.
Hell yes.
You were probably there a little bit after I graduated from high school, but we still kept going there for years and years. So, although I don't remember what the burger looked like, if the little burger napkin thing wasn't right or not. So
no, that was me. The burger napkin thing was perfect. It was just me. I couldn't do it. All right. So when I was a kid, I was obsessed with sports from day one. My father was a Boston guy. You probably know this. He passed his love of sports on to me. My idols were Ron Say, Gail Goodrich, Terry Bradshaw. What about you? Where did your love of music come from, and how did you first get into metal?
Well, really quickly, I was a huge sports fan growing up as well, and my idol also was Ron Say. Well, Ron Say and Mike Scioscia.
Okay.
Because I played catcher, so I loved both of those guys. I was not a big music guy. Our family wasn't big into music. I heard some like Jerry Reed and Johnny Cash when I was a little kid, but when I was like 11 years old, I went to my cousin's house, or one of my friends, my mom's friends, we called them cousins, and they played me Deep Purple's Machine Head. And I had never heard anything like that before. I'm like, what is this? This is incredible. So I went and bought the next day at like Woolworth or something for like $1. And then my next door neighbor said, well, if you like Deep Purple, you should listen to Black Sabbath. So I bought Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and that's kind of where it all ended for me there. I got really super into all the heavy music, but I like all sorts of music as well. It wasn't really until a little bit later when the new British heavy metal came in that I really became full heavy metal.
Yeah, that's really amazing that it was Deep Purple that got you into that whole thing. Not Foghat, but Deep Purple. But Deep Purple was so classic. You know, it's funny because even though I was a sports guy first and foremost, I always loved music, man. Love music. Like sports was my first love, but you know how it is. Like athletes want to be musicians, musicians want to be athletes. You can relate to this being in the 818 maybe. Do you remember that shopping center that was on Valley Circle? There was a Save-On drugstore. And that Save-On drugstore was there for years and years and years. For whatever reason, the first cassette, yes, kids, cassettes, those things back in the day, the first cassette I ever bought was Kiss Alive 2. And I must have listened to Detroit Rock City every single day because I never, like when I heard Detroit Rock City for the first time, I'm like, holy crap, what is that? It kind of reminded me like the first time I heard Teen Spirit from Nirvana, I'm like, well, I can't even explain it. Like, that's not music. That's another sport. As you were coming up, even in the business, were there moments in time where you would hear something like, you didn't even know what box to put it in? Like, that isn't even music. That's something beyond that. Am I making sense?
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, it happens often, by the way. And I did go to that Save-On a million times. I do remember exactly where that was. I worked at the Sears there, which was fairly close to that, too.
Okay.
But yeah, you hear that stuff. I mean, there's a million of those things where you first hear something and you go, this is good. This is something special. For me, several of those. One of the ones was I was an idiot. All my friends said to go see Guns N' Roses when they're playing around LA. I never went. I thought they're a glam band. I wasn't into glam. And then Appetite for Destruction came out. I got the advanced cassette tape, put it on in our office in New York, and pressed play, and just sat there going, "Oh my God, what is this?" So that was a big moment. And then the first time I ever heard Iron Maiden, the original demo tape, that was another one where I go, "Oh, what is this?" And ever since that moment, they've been my favorite band ever since I heard that. And Kiss, by the way, was my favorite band when I was in junior high school and high school. So also my first concert.
Interesting. So if they were too much of a glam band, what about the Crew? Like Motley Crue, you were right there in the middle of that in that time. Were they not too glam, or how were they different?
Well, here's the thing. So I was right in the middle of that. The first show I saw in LA of metal bands was Rat and Motley Crue at the Troubadour for $1 on a Wednesday night.
I love that, man. How great was that?
We spent every weekend there back in the day. I love that place, and it hasn't changed, by the way, either, which is crazy. But Rat and Crew were a little heavier, actually. We did tons of work with Motley Crue. We had them in my fanzine all over the place, and then the famous story is they had two managers, Kaufman and Kaufman, and they come to my mom's house and they sat on my mom's couch and said, "We have 900 Motley Crue records. What do we do with them?" I said, "Oh, take them to this distributor, Green World, that I know. They'll take care of you." And they did, and they kind of went from there. If I know then what I knew now, right? But Rat did appear on the first Metal Massacre record, which is the first record that I ever put out, and first time Rat was ever on a record too.
I love that. Speaking of which, tell the story. How did you first get connected up with Metallica? And when we're talking about hearing something for the first time, did you realize right when you heard them there was something very different about these guys?
Yeah. So the story is, only my friend John Carnarens and I were the only two in the new wave of British heavy metal scene in LA, which made sense because we're a million miles away and there was no internet or no nothing. But I was lucky enough, one of the record stores, Moby Disc and Licorice Pizza, both had sounds.
Mike, can I interrupt? My favorite place. I would go there. We would sell our records. We would get credit back. I loved Moby Disc. Right next door to that Licorice Pizza, right?
Yep, exactly. And I would go there every week to look for records, but they had Sounds Magazine, which is the big English magazine, and they were covering this new wave British heavy metal thing. So anyway, cut to a Michael Schenker group. He used to play guitar in UFO. He was playing a show at the Country Club in December of 1980. I went. My friend John went. My friend John was in the parking lot afterwards. He saw a kid wearing the Saxon European T-shirt. Nobody in 1980 knew who Saxon was, let alone had a European T-shirt. So he runs up to him and he goes, "Where did you get that shirt?" He goes, "You know who Saxon?" He says, "Yeah, my friend Brian, I love Saxon." So that kid turned out to be Lars Ulrich. He was 16 and I was 18. We just became friends over the music, and we'd hang out together and listen to music. And I remember he had a drum set in his bedroom once, and it wasn't even put together. And I said, "What are you doing with that?" I said, "I'm going to put together a band." Like, yeah, sure, Lars, sure you are. So fast forward, I start seeing there's metal bands in LA. I decided to put together a compilation album, which was similar to what was happening again in England at that time. So I was putting it together, and Lars called me up and said, "Hey, if I put together a band, can I be on the record?" And I needed bands, so I go, "Sure." And that, of course, ended up being Metallica.
Incredible. So can we say you launched Metallica?
That's even they give me credit for that, I guess. So it is roughly my fault because apparently those two guys, James and Lars, weren't even hanging out or playing together. But the opportunity to be on a record in 1982 was a big thing. So that's how they kind of came together.
All right, so you launched them and you knew Lars. So obviously it would stand to reason that if you can get them on the label, that'd be incredible. Like, yeah, I'm sure you're really happy for them and really proud of them and really grateful to be a part of the story. But having them on the label would be something. Were they the ones that got away, or how did that come down?
No money. I mean, I had no money when I started this, zero money, and they had no money. They came to me once and said, "Hey, we got a studio here and we can make a record for $10,000. I go, "I don't even have $1,000, let alone 10, and I have no way to get it." So look, they did what they did. They remain very, very close friends of mine. We work with them together all the time, doing many, many things. I mean, their documentary that's coming out soon, and they've remained really good friends. And I mean, look, it played out well for them, and I've done all right as well.
You have. Absolutely, you have. So I'm curious, like, when you obviously have a very different ear. Can you explain what you were looking for or are looking for specifically when you scout and sign bands?
Yeah, it's nothing really specific. I just kind of go what I like. But what I do say to bands is they'll sound original. Don't sound like somebody else. Take your influences and use them, but don't sound like them. Because a lot of bands will be like, oh, I love, whoever it is. And they'll sound just like them. Take all those influences, put it together and make the music that you want to make, but make sure it's different. It has your take on it, something different. Because that's the one thing, I listen to music all the time and just so many bands just sound like everybody else. And it's the one where you get it, where you go, oh, that's really different. A quick example of that is this band Ghost, who's now this massive band. They started out with us, and I got their first record, and I was like, what is this? This is incredible, because they were doing something completely different at the time from what everybody else was doing, and it worked, and now they're headlining arenas all over the world.
So when you first heard Slayer, what was your reaction, and what set them apart?
Yeah, so they were opening for one of our bands, Bitch, and I went to the show. They were playing in somewhere in Orange County. I forget which club it was. It was either Woodstock or Radio City. And I didn't go out there a lot because I lived in Woodland Hills. It's kind of far. But I saw, there's a bunch of different bands in there. I'll just go out and see if any of these bands are any good. So sure enough, here comes Slayer. And they played mostly covers, like Iron Maiden covers and Judas Priest covers, but they had a few originals. But they were like really good. I was like, wow, this is really different. So I went up to them afterwards and said, hey, I do this compilation album. I'd love to have you guys on. They said, we'd love to do that. And then, yeah, here we are. And all of a sudden, we signed them. One of the first big bands we signed, and I produced the first 4 records that they did, and I'll tell you, being in the studio with those guys, even the kids, you could just tell there was something special here. I just did a podcast earlier today about Hell Awaits, and they were asking me about that. I go, that was the record that I was really in there going, look, this band is something truly special.
It's interesting you said that they were just kids. It makes me think of something like I had an album that we released, and it was because at that time my guy Andy Gershon and his guy Scott Litt had a record label called Outpost, which was an offshoot of Geffen, and they could do whatever they wanted. And they somehow realized they were both Rome fans, and they wanted to make a record as kind of a, I don't know, kind of a novelty play, whatever it was. But I remember Scott. Scott was a big-time producer. They produced The Replacements and REM and a bunch of other bands. But I remember when he got with, I can't remember the band. It was a young band that was coming up, and they were young, and they were in strip clubs, and they were partying, and he was a little bit older, and like he not only was producing them, but man, he had to babysit them. So did you get caught up in the life, or were you trying not to do that, and were you protecting your investment? Like, what were you doing as a young guy with all these bands back in the day?
Well, I was just as young as they were, and knew very little about anything. So you get caught up a little bit. You party and you hang out with them, and it's a good time. But on another level, it's like I have a business to run, so I have to be somewhat responsible to do that. But so I didn't get caught up too much in that stuff. But we did have a good time back then, and certainly go out to the Troubadour. We'd be there every weekend and having a bunch of drinks and have a good time. But you can't get too far into that, because again, it's a business. And once it became a real business, it took about 3 years before it became a real company. But once that happens, you start to get employees and all that sort of stuff. You have to dial it down a bit, but it's difficult in this business because part of what you do is hang out with the bands.
That's the business, right? That's part of doing business.
Exactly. And what do? They hang out and have some drinks. So that's part of it. But I think I've been able to reel it in enough to not get super out of control and be as responsible as I possibly can.
Well, here's the question. You can reel yourself in, but how do you reel them in?
Yeah, that's a whole other story. One thing I learned really early on in this business was because it's music, and it's definitely the music that we deal with, heavy metal. You have a lot of kids that came from not great backgrounds and all this sort of stuff. So I learned early on that I need to learn more about how people think and react. So I read like 3 different psychology books, and kind of become basically underground psychologist, basically, because I'm talking to these people all the time, and a lot of times you do have to talk them off a ledge and get that together. But I say we're super, super lucky, because almost all of our bands are great guys, great people. They don't go super crazy. And we've had opportunities to work with bands that I know go over the line and get too much into drugs and all this other stuff. And honestly, it's not worth the pain to work with them for whatever money they're going to make. It's just not worth it. We did it a couple times, and it's such a horrible experience that I don't care if they're going to sell 1 million records. I don't want to deal with it from my sense, and for the rest of the bands too.
That makes sense to me.
Remain sane.
I was going to say, that makes sense to me. So Brian, in terms of, sorry to jump in terms of selling a lot of records in business, Cannibal Corpse sold a hell of a lot of records for you. Tell me I'm wrong. Are they not truly one of the best-selling death metal bands ever? And why do they have so much commercial appeal?
They are the biggest death metal selling band of all time. I think they've been consistent over their whole career. Like they still make really good records. They're still very viable. They're amazing live, and it didn't hurt that they were in Pet Detective because Jim Carrey is a huge fan. And that it's weird when they're doing that. I go, I don't know if that's a good idea, but it turned out to be a pretty good idea. And people know about them in regular life. Travis Barker, one of the Kardashians that wearing Cannibal Corpse shirts. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is wild, actually. What about, for instance, GWAR? Now, they're more than a band, right? They're more of a brand, a cultural phenomenon. It's more than just a band, right?
Yeah, it's almost impossible to explain what
Right.
it is, but it's a theatrical show. So what it is basically. I found them in 1989. They're playing a convention in New York, and I'd heard about them before. So I went to go see them. I was watching them with a bunch of friends, and I told them, if this band is even remotely sane, I want to work with them because they're so out there. Met them. They're a bunch of college students from Virginia, and they have half the guys are artists, the other half are musicians, and they just created this incredible thing that's still going strong today. And it's weird how many huge fans they have. Like they're in the Harvard Lampoon Hall of Fame, which is kind of insane because the people in that are all these super famous, normal-ish people. And so yeah, it's a whole thing, and it's just impossible to describe. There's nobody else does what they do. And yeah, if you get a chance to see GWAR, go see them, but don't get very close because you'll get something on you.
What about Megadeth? So were you in early on them? Did you try to get them? Give me a good Megadeth story.
Yeah, we tried to get them, but it was back in the days when we had no money, so we couldn't really offer them a whole bunch of money. So they signed with another independent label and went on to have a pretty good career. And obviously, I knew Dave Mustaine. Dave Mustaine also appeared with Metallica on the original Metal Massacre record, so that was his first ever album appearance as well. So yeah, we tried to get them, but it just didn't work out. But we've had countless bands tour with them, and we've worked with them on a variety of different things. So, and they just had a #1 record on the Billboard chart, which to them being around this long is really truly amazing.
All right, so that is amazing. So it kind of brings me to my next point. It's kind of lame, but what about the science? Why do we like what we like? As an example, I grew up and I came through college radio. So since I came through college radio, I came through the whole alt rock scene, alternative music, punk rock. That's what I like. That's what I've always liked. That's what I still like. Kind of got away from like punk, just to alternative. My kids who grew up upper middle class, suburban, listened to rap. You kind of gravitated towards metal. What's the science behind that? What goes on in our brain? Why do we like what we like?
That's a great question. And I've researched this a lot, and there really is no real answer. People just like what they like. And you ask anybody, it's usually because they hear something early in life that just resonates with them for whatever reason. And for me, it's I love that the guitar tone is just what it is. I first heard that guitar tone on, like, some of that Deep Purple record. I'm like, whoa, what is this? It's just something that speaks to you. And that's the wonderful thing about music is everybody has different tastes. Nobody's tastes are wrong. Whatever you like, and that's perfectly fine as long as you're into music. It's just a great thing, and it's such a big escape for people. And I've seen over the years too, you get all these kids that were like, hey, your music really helped me through a really bad time. Or, I mean, I've seen it on your show too, where people, having a tough time and, they listen to your show or they listen to music and gets that through them. It's very therapeutic, but there's really no reason why people gravitate towards one thing or another. A lot of it is certainly what you hear as a kid. We get a lot of parents now where their kids are all in heavy metal because they were into it. So they do good parenting and they're passing it along to their kids. But there's no, there's scientific studies that study this stuff, and there really is no consensus on why. It is what it is.
Interesting. So what about the genre today? Like, I don't want to be the old head, like, get off my lawn, but I just think that all the stuff that I listen to holds up. And I don't know if it's because I'm not open-minded enough to listen to new stuff, or if that old stuff really is that good. Because I think that old stuff really is that good. I'm blown away. Like, I'll play for my kids. I'm like, that song's 40 years old. That song is 40 years old, and I feel like that could drop today, and it would still just absolutely be a banger. Like, what about the genre today? Is it better? Is it worse? I'm talking about metal, or is it just different?
Well, first of all, you're exactly right because I grew up in the '70s and I listened to all that '70s stuff, and I think that stuff sounds just as good today as it did then.
Right.
And a lot of stuff stands the test of time, which is really important for music. As of where we are today, we're in an amazing spot right now. There's a company that does they look at the music sales for the entire world. And they do this big YouTube report every 6 months on all the different genres. And for the first part of 2025, the number one genre was R&B and hip hop. Number two is rock. Number three was pop, and number four was country. And a big part of the rock was heavy metal because you've got bands like Ghost and Sleep Token that are new bands that have number one records on Billboard and have a whole new crop of fans. So there's so many good bands, and just not even in metal and rock music too. There's a bunch of stuff. Youngblood is coming up, and he's making a big crash now with obviously the Black Sabbath cover he did. He just won a Grammy, and he's on the cusp of rock and metal. He's a big metal guy. So I think honestly, it's probably in one of the healthier places it's been in a long time.
All right, so let me ask you this. Probably an impossible question to answer. Like, if you were to ask me this, I might be able to answer it for myself, but I don't even know if I could, so I don't know how you could. But if I had to if you had to pick one single album, your favorite album from the genre, what would it be? Any band?
Iron Maiden, The Number of the Beast.
Okay, good. That was easier than I thought. I mean, would that be effectively the Let It Be of the genre?
I mean, for me, yeah, I think it's the greatest album ever recorded by humans. But I'm a big Iron Maiden fan. But yeah, that's number one. I mean, everybody has different stuff. And again, I won't disparage somebody else's taste. But it's interesting because I do this podcast and I talk to people about that.
Tell me about the podcast. It's a really interesting podcast. Tell me about the podcast.
Yeah, so a friend of mine who heard me on Eddie Trunk's show, he used to do Dennis Miller's podcast. He's a big rock and metal guy. He came to me with a concept about a podcast, and we didn't really kind of get it together for a while. And then I did the Metallica podcast, and the guys who do the Metallica podcast say, "Hey, you were pretty good. Would you like to do a podcast?" I said, "Sure." So it's called 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal. And it's like a 3-part podcast. We have a history part of it, a production part of it, and then a guest part of it. And we just talk about songs that I feel or the guest feels were very important to the genre. And it's super fun to do. It's a lot of work, but it's very fun to do. And we've had a lot of people. We've had your friend Brian Koppelman on, and a whole bunch of really cool people. So
Koppelman's great, isn't he? I get that this was a music executive. I love Koppelman. Like, what a great ear he has. What are your thoughts on Brian?
Oh, he's the best. I love him. He's just such a good dude and really knows his stuff. Obviously, he's become this, massive dude in Hollywood with billions and all these other shows that he's doing. But it was funny because he reached out to me because we're both huge fans of this band Riot. Came out in the early 80s. They had a couple records out in the early 80s, and they all kind of fell apart. And unfortunately, a lot of the members have passed away. But there's this record called Fire Down Under that's an underground classic that all of us know. And he loves that record. So he hit me up and said, "If you ever do a podcast on this, let me know." I said, "Well, you're on my list." So we talked about that kind of obscure album, which that's why I love him, because he loves obscure metal stuff like that.
He does. All right, so before I let you go, a couple of quick topics. You are a sports guy. You, like me, grew up liking or loving the LA Kings. Now, we had season tickets to the LA Kings long before 99 came to town. I would go there in the 70s when they used to pull 7,500 fans a night. They were purple and gold. We'd hang out in the Forum Club. My parents loved it. It was a great, great time. Rogie Vachon was standing on his head between the pipes. When and how did you find hockey?
Well, I played a little bit when I was a kid. We couldn't afford for me to play actual hockey because it was expensive with ice time and everything else. But I played street hockey and all this other stuff. And,
it was fun, right?
Yeah. Oh, I loved it. It was a lot of fun. We played like broom ball, real broom ball with everything but like pads and helmets and the whole thing, everything but skates. So I really liked it, but I kind of, it was off TV for a while. And in 1981, at like 11 o'clock at night, one of the local channels just started playing the New York Islanders Stanley Cup run. And I got super engrossed in it and got really into it. Started to go to some LA Kings games. And then one of my buddies had season tickets that they were getting them for doing printing work for the Kings or something. He said, "We don't use them. Would you want them?" I'm like, "Hell yeah." So 82 was the first year I had season tickets for the Kings, and I kept them all the way until like probably 2005 or something. So I was there all those years before Gretzky as well, when there's like 5,000 people there and nobody knew what was going on. So yeah, I've been ever since then. And then I just became a completely maniacal fan of hockey. I've been to I've been to Stanley Cups, I've been to World Cups, I've been to World Junior tournaments, I've been everywhere. It's kind of my therapy is what I say. I can go to a game and just kind of cut ties from all the music stuff and just really enjoy the sport. So, I love it.
I love that. So really quickly, who in the early years when you started to see the LA Kings, who were your guys? Who were your favorite players?
Well, early years, believe it or not, my favorite player, probably nobody will know this guy, J.P. Kelly.
Oh, I
He
know.
was
I
like this.
remember him. I remember him.
He
You
was
bet.
the big bruiser that would hit everybody 100 miles an hour. He was awesome. Obviously, Marcel Dion was an unbelievable player at that point. Like, still one of the best players of all time. That whole line with him, Charlie Simmer, and Dave
Triple
Taylor, the
Crown
Triple
line.
Crown line. Yep, those guys were amazing. And I'm always a huge Bernie Nichols fan as well, even before Gretzky got there, and then after he got there. And yeah, I loved all those players. It was a lot of fun back then because even though the funny Tiger Williams, another legendary guy who played for the Kings, was
Dude, I
hysterical.
interviewed him on my Talk 2 show on ESPN2. He scared the hell out of me. He had a pencil in his hand. I'm like, dude, I know you're gonna stab me in the head with that pencil. Like he was legitimately scary in person.
Yeah.
Even to sit down and talk to.
Yeah, so he was legendary, and but those Kings teams were a lot of fun. I mean, the games were always like 7-6 with a bunch
Right.
of fights, and it was a blast. So even before Gretzky got there, it was still a lot of fun. And then when he got there, being there for all those years and watching those games was just
Well,
unbelievable.
that was incredible those years because that was just so surreal and so. I mean, I couldn't even believe that trade happened. Do you remember a guy? My favorite guy growing up when I was a kid was Dave Hutchison. Do you remember Hutch back in the blue
yeah.
line, number 4,
Absolutely.
Big Hutch?
Yep.
Big Hutch.
Absolutely.
Not saying he was the best, but I loved him. I loved him. So, Brian, leave me with this thought. So, how did you find the jungle? What's your earliest recollection of the jungle?
Yeah, I was so not unsimilar to today, but I pretty much, unless I'm sleeping, I'm working. So at night I would go home and I had an office in my home, and I didn't want to listen to music. So I'm a big sports guy. And I like sports talk radio. So I would listen to sports talk radio at night while I was kind of doing some work. And one night I don't remember who preceded you on 690, but one day I was listening and he was gone and you were on, and I was like, oh wow, this is kind of cool. This is a little bit different. I like the guy's vibe. He's, from the West Coast and the whole thing. So I've been there since probably the first day you were live on the air on 690 at night.
Wow, the night show. You go all the way back to the night show.
The night show, I actually, not a lot of interaction with the show, but I did win huge facts of the day once with something about Marcel Aubu, who was the owner of the Quebec Nordiques at the Quebec Nordiques at the time.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. For those who say that we don't talk hockey, first of all, we do talk hockey, but if you won a huge facts based on something from the Deeks, that's big. That's big. Brian, this was long overdue, but lived up to all the hype, man. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you interacting with the show. That means a lot to me, and really good to talk to you, man. Just awesome that we finally got to do that. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, man. Like I said, it's been an honor as a longtime clone. This was a lot of fun, so I appreciate you.